Welcome back to Tech Hub. I'm Rob Taub here at WOR Radio 710 on your dial. I'm speaking with Jeff Hancock from Cornell University. How are you?
I'm great. How about you, Rob?
Good. So, did you hear my story?
I did, and it made me think, do you know that this is actually Jeff Hancock or not, and whether I'm actually an expert in deception?
I don't. I just know from the Cornell website, but now I see that there's an extra L in it. It's that Cornell in Trumansburg in somebody's barn. Okay, I didn't look closely enough.
Yeah, well, that is one of the main ways that we see deception taking place online is the perpetrators will mock up something that looks like, say, a bank or a university and try to get fraud there. So that is a pretty common one, trying to look like something that's actually legit.
Well, so how do we circumvent this? And I mean, what are the most common things that happen, and how do people get duped? I mean, see, I wasn't duped as much financially as I had my time wasted, and which my time is incredibly valuable, making the billions of dollars that I do here at WOR Radio on Tech Hub 710 on your dial. And you can go to www.robtaub.com, and Jeff, feel free to plug yourself throughout the show as well. We have plenty of time today.
Okay, well, we'll do. The thing about deception and technology is deception's been with us, forever. It touches on almost all aspects of human life, and you can go back to even Greek myths or back even into Confucianism, and deception is a thing there. There's stories about it, trying to detect it, worry about people lying to you. Technology sort of brings it all back into focus again, because you can have that guy in Derry that's pretending to be an Englishman in new ways that we never were able to do before. So, up until very, very recently, to talk to one another, we had to be in the same room at the same place. And now, here I am in Ithaca, and you're in New York, and we're having a conversation, no problem, and a bunch of other people get to listen in on that. So there's new ways that deception can take place. One of the most important kinds of deception that takes place online that most people are concerned about is what I call identity deception. So your man in Derry there, he was sort of trying to come across as something different than what he was, but you didn't know him previously or anything like that. And this is where all the Nigerian scams come in. So if you've ever had a Nigerian prince offer you a bunch of money, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'd love to do a show with a group of the people that have answered that guy. But, I guess there are people that do it. Otherwise, these guys wouldn't keep perpetrating that scam. What I do know is actually I have a number of friends who have responded to the Yahoo thing where they get I'm stuck in England or in this country, and I'm without my passport and money. Could you please wire it? Right, that's a particularly powerful scam. All of the scams rely on the same psychology as offline scams. So greed is a really big one. That's how the 419 spam emails work. You have this opportunity to make a whole lot of money for very little. In the case of one where you're helping a friend out, you're really going after somebody in the meanest possible way. So you're going after the Good Samaritan who's going to try and help their friend. And so exactly, they're using the psychology of the offline world and then just applying it to the online world. The reason it works, the reason it can be profitable, is scale. So as with almost everything on the internet, one of the main transformative aspects of it that makes it different from, say, paper and pencil is things can scale. So you can send out millions of spam letters. You can do that scam with the friend being lost to millions of people. And then even if you're looking at a tiny percentage, 0.001, you're going to make some money. So
in other words, there used to be, actually, I live at 72nd between Madison and Park. There used to be a guy every Sunday night that would go to this coffee shop, and it was actually a brilliant scam. He would tell people that he had to get to a synagogue in Washington, D.C. to make a minyan on Monday morning, and he needed fare for the Acela. And it usually worked remarkably, but it was what you're saying is on the internet, can you do like a mass mailing then and hit 100,000 people at a time and then play the percentages that, even if 0.5% respond, you're going to make some money?
That's right. It becomes a numbers game. So where for that guy, okay, so he's going to make a little bit of money every weekend, but nothing, that is going to stand out as like, big profit, attract a bunch of criminals to it. The same idea can be applied at scale on the internet. And so, when you're operating in a space on the internet that doesn't involve people's real identities, or where you can be sure that they're real identities, that's where you're most likely to run into people that are trying to develop a scam. So that's why emails from people that you don't know have a much higher probability of being spam. Going into an online chat room, you're basically walking into a seething pit of deception and play and pretense and all this. But, a really important point here is that much of our day-to-day internet use isn't in any of these spaces. Most of us use email to talk to people we already know in the real world. We're on Facebook talking to people we already know in the real world. We're using Skype with family and friends. We're on the phone with the people on the radio that we've talked to before. So that's where you get into this different kind of deception, which is, am I more likely to lie to you, Rob, on the phone or, say, in email? And that's where people start to get a little bit surprised. In a lot of our research, we find that, contrary to most people's expectations, the phone is where people lie the most, more than face-to-face. And email and Facebook tends to be less deceptive than face-to-face or on the phone.
Okay, well, I heard that when Facebook was going public, they didn't want to cancel a lot of their phony accounts, and they acknowledged that there are a lot of duplicate accounts or fake accounts because they felt it would hurt the total number of membership they had and affect the stock price. So is that the case, and are people policing this? I mean, as an example, I was walking down the street yesterday at 57th Street between Park and Lex, and there was this giant truck there, like a moving van, and they were shredding papers. So it seems that with all the deception and criminal stuff that comes along, then a new business gets born every day to combat them. So now you can't just toss your stuff in the garbage because somebody can go through it. So there's the company that drives around with a giant truck and shreds all of your papers for you. What other kind of businesses are coming about as a result?
It's a great question. In fact, the shredder is a really good example. So that company can be hired to come in and shred all your paper. And they're going to do a pretty good job of it. Most of that stuff will never be read again. The digital world, it's actually much, much more difficult to destroy digital documents. So if you think about email as like the classic, application, it's almost impossible to get rid of all your email. And one of the main reasons is because you've sent email to people that, say you were lying to. And so other people beyond you have control of the email, the target, that's going to pass through a number of servers before it gets to the target. So in the digital world, I often refer to everything you put online as sort of a digital tattoo. It's possible to get rid of it, but it's really difficult. So it's really hard to shred digital information. But yes, you're right. Into the breach comes a number of companies that do promise both kinds of things. Never lose another email, never lose another file, right? You see lots of this kind of thing. And then you have other companies that say, hey, if you want to get rid of digital stuff, we're the people to do it.
Because now, boy, it's like this whirling dervish then. So how do you know if you're finding a legitimate company that's going to save your files and back you up? Maybe they are perhaps another charlatan company. How do you check out, because you don't have a brick and mortar business, how do you check out a company to know they're legit?
Well, thankfully, the Internet giveth and the Internet taketh away. So it does provide some new ways of lying, and your guy in Derry there's the great example, but it provides a whole host of tools for doing background research. So anybody that's ever planned a trip, anybody that's looked up a girlfriend or a boyfriend, etc. I mean, Google is just one of these, we take it for granted, but it's an incredibly powerful information machine. It's just, if we were to go back even 10 years to 1998, it'd be hard for us to imagine what we're able to research now. And so all this information is at our fingertips, and we can do a lot of work. It's actually fairly easy to uncover dodgy businesses, those things, but it requires that you're actually looking for it. When people get into, say, a mode of like they know what they want and they want to go get it, say that they've invested in something, they can actually become to believe things. They can be really easily duped. And so the main way to do it is just like what you would do as a journalist or just what a cop would do is you gather evidence from around the web, you talk to other people. And it's relatively easy to unravel all these. But in the Madoff case, you made a really good point, which is like, why would anybody want to discover this guy was a liar? I was making 11% a year, so I'm incentivized to not look too closely. And that's where we start to see real problems around deception online.
Okay, we're taking a station identification here on WOR Radio 710 AM on your dial. I'm Rob Taub on the Tech Hub. We will be back in 10 seconds. We're back on the Tech Hub. I'm Rob Taub, your host, with Jeff Hancock, professor of communications at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. We've been talking about deception on the web, and there are many levels of deception, as we all know. One of them in specific is deception in work and for love. Am I quoting you properly, Jeff?
Yes, yeah, that's it. Work and love. Lots of lives go on for work and love. Let's
do work first, because I can use this as a school for scoundrels. And after I'm terminated from the Tech Hub on WOR, and I want to go somewhere like NPR or the White House, and I need to perpetrate a fraud, what do people do?
Well, there's been a lot of high-profile cases of CEOs, of administrators at universities going down for lying on their resume. This is one of the sort of hot topics this year, with the most famous probably being the Yahoo CEO lying about his CS degree on his resume. And when you look at that, you think, okay, resumes, whatever, everybody lies by a little bit. It turns out that it's a fairly costly deception that can run into the billions. When people hire individuals, employees that they assume have certain skills and then don't, it's actually quite expensive. You either have to get rid of the person and hire somebody else, or train that person up. So it's a really big problem that industry faces. And when there's a bad economy, you see this sort of pressure on jobs increase, and there's pressures on people to maybe pad the resume a little bit.
Okay, well, that's interesting and really fascinating to me, because it seems like now you can find out anything about anybody. I may have mentioned this on a show. I'm not going to mention my friend's name, but somebody sitting around the computer, you're wondering about, do you wonder whatever happened to so-and-so? I've lost touch with this person. So I Googled an old college friend, and boom, what popped up? But his arrest photo from a DWI in a southern state, which I shall not mention. And I mean, I was kind of stunned. Also, well, another thing is the New York City website, Acris. If you learn how to, because it's a government website, it would take like five MIT grads to navigate. But somehow one night I was on there trying to find out information about the apartment that I own. And much to my horror, I was able to call up my actual mortgage, which is stored there in a PDF, with my Social Security number and my ex-wife's Social Security number and every little bit of information you could possibly imagine. And I it's stunning. And in fact, I asked an attorney about this, and he said this is why now he's urging people more and more to buy condos in New York, but he's also telling people to form an LLC, because then your personal information won't be on there. So anyway, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with all this. Well, it seems to me that's one aspect. For me as a journalist, I'm able to find out a lot about people now. Sometimes, you don't realize it. I don't, know why. I could find out very little about my old college friend other than that DWI thing. But
right.
We had once had a family friend years and years ago who used to tell people that he won the Congressional Medal of Honor, and had a huge amount of respect for this. And then finally, one smart person in the family said, "This seems really ludicrous." So my dad served in World War II and won the Bronze Star, and he said, if you win the Congressional Medal of Honor, you have to do something really brave and incredible. So one of us went to the library and looked it up, and of course, this guy was not on the list. Now you could just check that kind of stuff. So it should. I would think this level of deceit and charlatanism would be lessened because of the web.
Well, I think you're actually right. And most people, when we ask questions like, where do you think people would lie more on a resume that was on LinkedIn or a resume that was on, a piece of paper, like the way we've always done it, most people sort of, it kicks in that, the internet's full of deception. And most people say that LinkedIn is. But your story leads very nicely to our findings. we did a study and we compared people that were putting information up on LinkedIn versus information on a classic Word document resume. And what we found is that people lied on average about 3 times on their resumes, which is typical, I guess, here in the U.S. In the UK, it's a little bit lower, but that's what we do here. And we were interested in how did the line fall out across the 2 things. We found that there was about the same number in both, but what was really important was that the LinkedIn resumes had fewer lies about the important stuff that employers care about, like their responsibilities, their skills. The paper resumes had more of those, and it's exactly for the reason that you mentioned, which is LinkedIn profiles are public, and other people can check them. In fact, they're not only public, they're linked to other people that would know what your former responsibilities and skills were, and people were being protective. They couldn't lie about those sort of things. They lied instead about how much they travel, what their favorite book was, what their hobbies were, things that are difficult to verify by others. So the Internet can have this sort of opposite effect, which is to actually make us a little bit more honest by making everything we put out there public.
It could be Professor Hancock. We were going to give the presidency of Harvard, but we did the research and noticed that you've never actually been skeet shooting. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to remain at Cornell.
Oh, so close. So close.
I mean, I'm kind of flabbergasted by like the Yahoo guy lying, and then this television show Restaurant Impossible, the star of the show, who seems to have a pretty good career right now, lied and said that he was a chef at the White House. That seems to be the easiest. Well, maybe you can't do a search on the White House because everybody there is a secret, but it was discovered.
Mm-hmm. Well, lying is hard. We often think people lie because they're lazy or whatever, and that certainly is true sometimes. But lying is hard, and almost every sort of scandal that comes out of a deception, you think, man, why would they screw that up? But if this guy's perpetrating a lie about his, cooking history or CS history, it gets really complicated really fast. There's a saying for it, right? Oh, the tangled webs we weave, and it just becomes very difficult to keep all of your facts in order, especially as you start to become successful. And some of that success is based on some of your lies, as the case for the Yahoo CEO. And many people came to his defense and said, well, look, that's just so long ago, and he's got this amazing career. People can come down on both sides of that. But the key here is that, the Internet allows you, yes, in some ways, to say you could be anybody you want, but because it's public and if it's tied to your real identity, like a resume is, it actually constrains how much you can lie.
Okay. You're a professor
at
an esteemed Ivy League institution. Mm-hmm. And then I have a big question. Did Al Gore invent the Internet?
Of course he did.
Well, wait a minute. My Aunt Maxine claims that she did in her basement in Ridgewood, New Jersey. I'm tending to go with her.
Yeah, I know. This is one of the things that's sort of confounded me for a while. I really thought that the Internet, because of its ability to make things public and recordable, etc., would make our society more honest. Okay, I understand you and your audience are probably laughing now. That was naive. And it's really fascinating that, the president's birth certificate, for example, is fascinating to me because, here's the documents, they've all been laid out, and yet there's still a percentage of people that believe he was not born in the U.S. And so it's clear that, getting the facts presented to you is not the only thing that goes into a decision about what you believe. So it's certainly the case that that's true, but the increasingly network part of the Internet, so Facebook, for example, provides another constraint, and that is that the people you care about for your reputation, not being considered a liar or a cheat, those people are increasingly tied to you on the Internet and see everything that you do. And so I think there could be some room for some improvement, for sure, in terms of deception in our worldly discourse.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, look at, we were talking about it on a previous show about why certain people use certain websites, and it's because you can go through, you Google something and you want to find out information, especially where we're talking about healthcare, and we had Chalkable was the teaching website. Anyway, they're you'll have people go to the WOR website and look at Rob Taub under personalities, and you'll see some of the many fascinating shows we've had. Anyway, you go to specific sites. It's, I think, what's given Wikipedia so much power. There are people that question whether or not it's a legitimate source, but you never want to look up an encyclopedia because then somebody tries to sell you an online subscription to encyclopedia. So Wikipedia just seems to be the default information provider for everybody.
Well, it takes advantage of this thing called crowdsourcing, where you get a lot of people to do a little bit of work, and it's completely changed the way we think about knowledge and encyclopedias. And I think Wikipedia is an incredibly valuable resource, and the more people that actually use it and pay attention to it, the more powerful it becomes, because you have somebody that's really interested in the topic. They're going to pay attention. They're going to update it. They're going to curate it. I know people still laugh at Wikipedia, but I
use it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I hope it's legitimate. I'm glad we're getting into this. I hadn't even thought we'd be going in this direction. But here's a bizarre segue. I saw an episode of 30 Rock that claims that you could go in and edit Wikipedia as you so desire. That seems kind of impossible to me. Is that the case?
You can. You could go on there and do anything you want. You could write anything. You can change anything. The social norms of the site are that you don't, for instance, write about yourself, but people violate it all the time. The amazing thing for it is that for any single topic, any entry, there may be 1, 2, 50, 1,000 other people that are watching that entry to see what's done to it. And it's the power of sort of scaling that allows Wikipedia to survive that,
So somebody could somehow go in there and say that Rob Taub did all these kind of wacky things at one time or another, and that's just going to be accepted and put in? Because when I first set myself up on Wikipedia, it was pretty easy to see that I write for Huffington Post and I'm on Fox News. You just go to either of those websites and type my name in, and you get 100 hits on both of them. Yet they seemed reticent to kind of accept me, and they all kept saying, we need justification or proof. I mean, what more proof can I give you? It's not a fake. So why that? And then why do they allow this easy alteration of the truth?
Well, sometimes the truth is hard to define exactly, especially if it's, say, things related to opinion or political things. But no, it's very open. The idea is to do that. When it comes to people, they want some sort of proof so that it's not just people kind of creating, completely flattering portraits of themselves. I'm sure you would never do that, Rob, but one way to warrant that would be to have the link to pieces that were done on other sites, and then that would, get it through. Okay,
so just being a deceptive, lying kind of guy that I am, I was thinking more of like going to Christopher Columbus, and instead of saying in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, I would put in 1493 Columbus sailed the deep blue sea. They wouldn't allow me to change the facts like that then?
No, you could. In fact, I would encourage you to try.
Okay.
And then watch and see how long it gets corrected. I think it would be corrected within minutes.
Oh, and is this because they have a fact checker sitting around there, or
No, it's a completely not completely. It's a very distributed system. So there would be people that care a lot about that entry, and that any time that entry is changed, they would get a little alert in their email, and then they would go take a look at what was written and see that you had vandalized it, and they would revert that change. They could just click a button and that change would disappear, and they would say in the records, like, this is why we did that, and etc. So I think if you do something like that to a site like that especially, I bet you it would take minutes for it to be revoked.
Okay, we're getting ready to wrap up the show. We have a couple of minutes left, so we've chatted away. We didn't even get to our section on reviews, but we could do that another time when you phone in. Anything specific that you think we should focus on for the future? Where do you see all of this heading? More or less lies and deceit, internet cops and detectives growing at a rapid rate?
I think we'll see sort of two types of the internet. One is where it's very connected to the real world, where everybody's identities are very well verified. And then there's another world where it's a little bit murkier, a little bit darker. where deception can take place, where you can do things that you couldn't do in the real world. And hopefully we'll be able to make pretty clear distinctions between those two worlds and when you're in one kind of space and when you're in another. I think that deception, it's always been with us, and we have to work really hard to make sure that we keep it at levels that are going to work for society. I think when it comes to things like reviews for hotels, restaurants, doctors, shoes, mechanics, this is a new form of sort of helping each other out. And, of course, wherever that takes place, you see people try to take advantage of it, and that's what we'll see.
Well, I'll give myself a little plug here. I mean, I used to be a reviewer for People magazine. They had a pretty major book review section, which is no more, or not the way it was, but we made it a point to only review books that we liked, but we were never lying about them. If we had a book that we felt, gee, this book is a piece of junk, we decided we'd take a pass on it after it was read and reviewed, because it just wasn't, we didn't want to tell our people, hey, don't go buy this book. We'd rather say buy a book that we think is very good. Anyway, I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and tomorrow is the Cornell Entrepreneurial Summit, and I will be there along with a fascinating group of people from Cornell and the New York City tech world, and we'll be doing interviews with everybody from there, and it will be on at a later date. So thank you very much for joining me, Jeff, and I look forward to meeting you one of these days.
Right on, Rob. Likewise.
This is Rob Taub. We've been here on Tech Hub. Thanks for joining me.